All right, we are live. Welcome back to Friday the 13th Marketing Qualified Rundown. I'm Lucky Nick here with Lucky Chris.
I did not know it was Friday 13th until you just said that.
I
It's been a busy morning.
think it's a lucky day. I don't know why people they think it's such an unlucky day, but we're going to talk about two lucky things. One, we're going to talk about spectrum thinking, and we're going to talk about what we constantly say in almost all of our content, which is B2B ads do not have to be boring. Right? All right. So, Chris, what the heck is spectrum thinking?
Let's try to simplify this a little bit. I mean, you can be the more technical guy on this one, but um, what is a it? I think the simplest way is just make sure you have a number of different likely scenarios. So if you're going to build a campaign or you're going to do some type of go-to-market effort, make sure you build some likely scenarios. Um, what is the expected scenario? What is the upside of that, and what's the downside of that?
Yeah. Options, right?
Options. Always have a plan B. Always have a plan C in place.
Yeah, I think spectrum thinking is, I mean, it's somewhat of a fancy way of saying what you should always do no matter what. I mean, have multiple scenarios so that when you are pitching it to, whether you're pitching it to a client, you're pitching it to your boss, you're presenting it down to your team. I mean, show the different options. And it's then mentally people have a way of thinking about it probably a little bit easier because they don't think it's just this. It has to be this. Well, these are the options that it could be, right?
Yeah, I feel like this image here, like normal and worst case, should be flipped. No.
Well, I think the idea is that the mixed scenario is if you're presenting ideas, it's the safer one, right? It feels safer. The normal and the worst are, not as ideal.
Yeah.
But you could go either way. So, as an example, like if you were on a campaign, like Chris said, yeah, like if it's clicks on the normal scenario, this is what's going to happen. We're going to get 10 to 15% lift. On a mixed scenario, you could say, well, overall clicks going to stay flat, but engagement goes up in certain options. And in the negative, it's like, hey, it's a total crapper. It doesn't work at all. The redesign sucked. But hey, we moved through quickly. So like,
Well, let's use a real life scenario. Our done for you LinkedIn outreach product, right? So the likely scenario is on a per account basis, you'll get 1 to 2 meetings booked a week. Right? That's the likely scenario. That's the standard deviation here of the bell curve. And then when you go one standard deviation away in the bad way, it's basically zero, right? And we've had that happen. We've had situations where an account will go dark on us for a few weeks at a time. And then on a best case scenario, we've had 3 to 4 appointments scheduled in 1 week per account, right? So, I mean, a number of I get that that's a wide range, but that is what happens in the real world. Obviously, the way we hedge for that is we make sure that we're managing at least 3 accounts at any given point in time, which helps smooths out that curve. But that's I think a real life example of it. How to what the expectations are of that specific product that we have.
agreed. All right, so let's talk about the second topic, which is B2B ads do not have to be boring. So this was, I thought, a super clever ad. We are actually familiar with this company called Ramp. So Ramp is basically it's an expense management service type company. They ran this ad, and if you get into the text of what it is down at the bottom, it's a whole explanation of Calvin, his history. He started at 11 years old. He did this, and then at 19, he was hired by Google. At 20, he joined Ramp, and like it gives a little history of what it is. But I think the point in this ad is instead of it being some generic ad, it's something that actually is memorable, right? It makes you actually pause. it makes you stand out. It shows like it's just something different. So again, the point being, now when I think about, I mean, I read this ad, like when you think about a photo receipt or doing an expense ad, I think about this. I mean, I think about the company. So just a good way to, an example of how you don't have to be boring with B2B ads.
Yeah, and I also think that don't let the creative person tell you exactly what's boring and not boring. Sometimes, that could work against you. I'll give you an example. We have a client, and the founders are hardcore engineers, and the look and feel that they're going for is a very different look and feel than you would expect from like if you were to bring this to a creative person. They would go with a very different look and feel. But and their argument is they understand their buyer because they are their buyer, right? And so boring to them is very different than what you and I might think is boring.
Yeah, I mean, the key of all ads and breaking out is meet them where they are, right? Meet them where they are, know your audience, and talk to your audience that way. All right, that is a reminder of B2B. Don't be boring. Last but not least, for this week's rundown is our meme, which I can appreciate this a lot because when we say final draft in marketing, there's usually never a final. It's final, version 2, version 3, version 4, version 5, version 6. Like trying to get to the final is almost an impossibility when it comes to marketing assets, content, imagery, creative. So
yeah, I mean that's actually when I saw this, it took a second for it to sink in, but it's so freaking true. It's so freaking true that word popped itself in there, and then you just see version revisions go from there.
Yeah, it's almost like you're trying to force it to be closed. It's just not.
And why does that? Why do you think that happens? I mean, in my experience, it happens because your decision maker isn't always the true final decision maker, right? You have, and that could be, you're working with a client and they love it. They say, yeah, this is good. This is final. Like, and then you make it final. And then they say, hey, this is what we're sending out. And then everyone's got their 2 cents that they want to put into it.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think you're right. I think at the end of the day, the who is that actually makes the decision on final is often not who you think. So.
Yeah.
All right, that is the rundown for today. Everybody have a great Friday the 13th. Have a great weekend. I know a lot of people are out of school. School's ending. So all the marketing people in education, get a break for a little bit.
Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, and anybody who has a father, make sure you give them a phone call.
All right, guys, take care, and we will see you with a rundown next week.